People who come to Uruguay to learn Spanish love that we Uruguayans are friendly and our buena onda, good vibes. Most of our students who are moving to Uruguay are from the US. Uruguayans are patient, so go ahead and put in practice what you have learned in class. Spanish spoken in Uruguay is absolutely real Spanish.
I'm here with Paula, who's admissions officer for Academia Uruguay, which is a language school here in Montevideo. Paula, it's great to have you here. Thank you so much for helping us to understand about what people should be aware of regarding learning Spanish when they come to Uruguay. I understand that people write to Academia Uruguay all the time saying if they come and learn Spanish here in Uruguay, will they be learning real Spanish?
Yeah. That's absolutely true. It's absolutely real Spanish. For example, if we talk about British English or American English. Yeah?
Right.
For example, you go to the US or to London, and in some places you will listen to elevator, lift, or torch, flashlight. Okay, here we say frutilla for the same fruit. In other countries of South America, it's called fresa for the strawberry. We have differences in terms of vocabulary. We have differences in terms of pronunciation, or in terms of grammar. We use the pronoun vos instead of tú, but are minor differences in general.
Right, exactly. So it's just like somebody from the States, if you're going to go to the UK, you're going to absolutely be able to understand what everybody is saying around you.
If you learn, let's call Rio Platense Spanish, the one we said is spoken in Buenos Aires and most of Uruguay, you'll be able to communicate along the whole continent and Spain.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, and I always say that the accent from this part of the world is very sexy in Spanish.
Well, that's something that you say. I'm not allowed to say that.
But it is. So if you're learning Uruguayan Spanish accent, very sexy accent. One of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you was because I talk to a lot of foreigners who are coming here, monolingual English speakers. They've only ever spoken English in their lives, and they say to me, yeah, when I come, I'm going to take Spanish lessons, and in a year then when I'm fluent. And I'm like, no, there's much more involved to learning a language, especially if you've never spoken a second language before. So I wanted to ask you, as somebody that works in this area, what makes a good Spanish or good second language learner?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I think that moves the focus from the language itself, from Spanish, to the student. When we learn a language, of course, the school, the teacher, it's important. But I, as a student of a second language, or anybody, is responsible of his or her process, as well. Attitude, for example, is one of the most important things. Be, for you, a risk taker, yeah?
Right.
You will make mistakes. It's not easy to learn a second language. If we think a child or a baby and spends 1 year and a half, 2 years without speaking, only listening to his family, mother, father, brothers, sisters, whatever, and then after 1 year and a half starts speaking what? A few words.
Right.
Or very simple phrases. You don't start with a complex sentence or the most difficult verb tenses. It's a process. It takes time. Try to use all the opportunities you have in your home country, in Uruguay, to practice Spanish. And don't be afraid of making mistakes.
Yeah.
All of us make mistakes when learning a second language.
Yeah,
it's part of it.
And you have to make mistakes, and a lot.
Of course.
Yeah.
The other thing is to enjoy the journey. I mean, it's a process, and it's not something that it's going to be done already in a few months. It takes time, and don't feel frustrated. That's, for me, the second most important thing. Enjoy it.
Have a sense of humor, probably.
Yeah, well...
About yourself, right?
Yeah,
and
laugh
the
at yourself,
situation
of
you're
course.
in.
Yeah. Well, in terms of setting realistic expectations, I would say that age does matters. Let's be true. It's like when you learn how to, play an instrument or ride a bike. If you learn it with 5, 10 years old, it will be easier than if you start learning a second language as an adult. Another thing is having experience in learning a second language in general. It doesn't matter if it was Spanish, English, German, Italian. When you are used or your brain is used to how to study.
Right, it's kind of like those connections in
it's
the
like
brain,
you
right?
already have the connections on the brain, on your mind, and you know how the process will be, how long it takes. That you will start, for example, learning the basic structures, the present tense. Then you will go probably to the simple past, and it will be more and more difficult as time goes by.
More complicated.
More complicated, yeah. You don't need to learn how to learn a second language. It's something that you already know. But when you have never studied a second language before, you need to learn two things: the new language itself and how to learn a second language.
So for adults who are going to come to Uruguay, they want to move to Uruguay, they've never spoken another language before, let's set some realistic expectations for them. So what can they realistically expect to achieve in Spanish?
If you start learning Spanish from the basics, from scratch, you have never studied Spanish before, and you come to Uruguay, I would say that it would be a nice idea or a good idea to start the learning process before traveling, taking online classes with an institute from the country you are planning to move, because you will be learning the accent or the variety of Spanish that you need. That would be smart. Think of that during the first 6 months to 1 year, you'll be able to introduce yourself, to talk about your hobbies, simple phrases or sentences in present, past, future. It will be possible to have basic conversations with your neighbors, commerce in general. If you go to a restaurant and you want to talk to the waiter, the doorman in your building, going to a free market, all of that is possible. But
And that's essential. I mean, if
essential,
you're
of
doing
course,
that,
of course,
you're making good progress.
Of course, essential for living in a Spanish-speaking country. Probably you won't be able to discuss with a native speaker about politics, for example. No, you are not yet an independent user.
You say independent user?
Of the language, yeah. That has to do with the European framework of reference for languages, which is divided in levels A, B, and C. And the B level is what is called the start of the independent user of the language.
Okay. And what's an independent user?
For example, to be able to discuss different topics, give your opinion, in complex context, I mean not basic things, to understand mostly of what a native speaker says to you. For example, it's very difficult for a second language speaker, in this case Spanish, to be in a birthday party or in a group of 5-6 people and understand what they are talking all together at the same time. I mean, that's really hard. Of course, you won't be able to do so after 6 months or 1 year. When I say basic conversations, I'm thinking of basic topics. As we said, with a waiter, ordering in a restaurant, talking about daily things with a friend, a neighbor, doorman in your building, going to the free market, supermarket, really basic paperwork, because paperwork can be difficult.
So that's the first year. After that, you could start to move to more complex general social situations.
We said 6 months to 1 year when you are studying in Uruguay, for example, and you are living in a Spanish-speaking country. You need to work on that. It's not just coming to the school and taking classes.
How can we maximize the chances of becoming a good communicator in Spanish?
Okay, remember what we said at the beginning? We said be a risk taker.
Yes.
Yeah? And I think it has a little bit to do with your question now. For example, maximize your contact with the language. Before traveling, it could be listening to a podcast or listening to music in Spanish. Ideally, Uruguayan Spanish or Argentinian Spanish, so your ears get used to how the new language sounds, or in this case Uruguayan Spanish sounds. Watch films in Spanish. All that will help you in the learning process. It's not only going to classes. Okay, I have studied 5 hours on Sunday. Okay, but sometimes it's better to spread, of course, and take 1 hour a day and say, okay, 30 minutes I spend listening music in Spanish, or 40 minutes watching to a movie or a video on YouTube. Daily contact with the language is always better than spending a huge number of hours in one day. Okay?
So it's not that you're going to be listening to the podcast and understanding it. You're getting your ear accustomed. You're doing your cooking in the evening, you put it on in the background. That's besides the studying, right? Your ear is getting accustomed. Or when you're watching a film from Argentina, then you put the subtitles on in English. Once you know the plot, you could put the subtitles on in Spanish. But what you're saying is that it's all about the ear at this point, not understanding things, getting your ear accustomed to the sounds.
Absolutely.
Cool.
At this point, yeah, it's everything about listening, about getting used to how this new language sounds.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Then probably if you're taking classes before traveling, in this case to Uruguay, you will start understanding words. Yeah. Okay. They said hola. Hola means hello, for example. Yeah. But you won't be able to understand a complete sentence or what they are talking, what's happening. That's why
You're not trying to at this point.
We are not
Keep
trying
our
to do so.
expectations low.
Yeah, exactly.
We're just listening,
exactly
hearing the sounds.
and that's very important. Keep your expectations low.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. What next?
And it takes time, but I mean, it's like Pink Floyd, another brick in the wall, you know? You have to be in touch with Spanish. If you have a neighbor or a friend who is a native speaker of Spanish, okay, go for a coffee with him or her. Enjoy the process. It takes time. Everything you do daily or twice a week, 3 times a week is helpful. It has to do with patience, of course. Learning a language is not something that can be done in a few weeks or a few months. It takes years. Nowadays, there are many apps that can be helpful for learning a second language. I think that apps are really a good idea, but in combination with classes, not alone.
I don't think that there's an app with the accent from here right now yet, right?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. But if you're having classes with, for example, an Uruguayan Spanish teacher, and you want to combine those classes with an app for learning Spanish as a second language, of
Great
course,
combo.
that will help.
Yeah.
Yeah. And probably will help you to have more vocabulary on that language. Yeah, it's a good combination, but I won't say it's a good idea, the app alone.
Right,
Okay?
right.
And then, well, dedication. 1 hour every day, 30 minutes every day. It could be a very good idea to read in Spanish about any topic you like or you already know in your mother tongue, because it's something that you know about. So it will be easier to understand the idea or the gist. Yeah.
Is that like technical reading, you mean?
Can be technical, but I mean, if you're interested in cooking or traveling, it's something that you already know the topic.
I always say, by the way, that a glass of wine helps a lot.
Yeah.
And when I could speak very little,
It will help you to be a risk taker, of course.
totally. When I spoke very little Spanish, a glass of wine was always very handy. At the end of the night, I'd be like, I had some really great conversations. So that's always very helpful.
You know something?
And it lowers your inhibitions.
Yeah, of course. You know something? Time ago we had a couple, of course they were our students. They had online classes. I won't say from which country. I won't say their names. But every time the teacher started the online session, they were both with a glass of wine.
They were British, right?
No, they were not. I won't tell you more.
Well, and I'm with them. I think it's because it's all about lowering your inhibitions. In my opinion and experience, as somebody that learned Spanish in my early 20s. Again, talking about expectations. I think if we're being brutally honest, most people that come that have only ever spoken one language before, if they can get around on a day-to-day level with their Spanish within the first year of being here, after actively studying and really working for that, they should be like giving the thumbs up, right? I mean, that is a really good job. There are some exceptional language learners. Most of us are going to be there. at that point, right? I mean, it was the same for me as well, and I was in my 20s when I started learning Spanish. What about people that, like, because everybody, you know, like, you want to, like, have more in-depth conversations with your neighbors and things like that, right? What do people need to do to be able to get into this more independent phase that you're talking about?
Of course, keep taking classes, that's for sure. You will need more time, dedicate more time to language learning classes, but not only classes. I think it is important to practice. For example, you go to a restaurant and the waiter speaks English, and try to speak in English because he thinks that it will be easier for you. You can say, okay, thank you so much, but can I speak Spanish? I'm learning Spanish. I want to practice my Spanish. You can say that, I mean, that's absolutely polite.
How would you say that in
Spanish?
Yeah.
Well, I would say, disculpe, ¿puedo hablar en español? Quiero practicar mi español. That's absolutely polite and friendly. And I would say that I'm Uruguayan, and most of the Uruguayans, we are happy to help you in practicing our language. We find it nice when we find out someone who is doing the effort in learning Spanish, and we will give you time to think. Probably we will help you, we will correct you. I think that every situation can be an opportunity to practice.
And you have to create those situations, right?
Of course, yeah.
Especially if somebody's coming here, they're in a couple, for example. I always say when you do anything in a couple, it's kind of like you have headphones on. You're not absolutely 100% connected to your reality compared to when you're moving through the world as an individual. People don't approach you as well so much when you're in a couple with another person. And so you do have to have like if you want to move from the basics to a more complex engagement with other Spanish speakers, then you've got to create those opportunities, right? You've got to maybe like join a tango class.
Yeah, but I would say something. You come, for example, you move to Uruguay as a couple, we build our relationships in a certain language. For example, let's say I met you in the UK. We started our relationship as friends or colleagues in English. Sometimes it's difficult to switch, let's say, our relationship as friends or colleagues to another language, even though we are fluent in that language. The same happens to couples. They come to classes in Spanish, of course. They have 3-4 hours a day of Spanish classes, but they come back home and the day continues in English or in their mother tongue. So it's important to look for opportunities, probably apart. You go to a club and you go to a cafe to read a book and you meet new people who speak Spanish.
Anything else to add regarding tips for language learning before we move on?
It's important to focus on communication from day one.
And not grammar.
And not grammar, exactly. Years ago, it was very important to learn the grammar to be able to speak or to say a sentence. Nowadays, and here, we focus on communication from day one. You will make mistakes, that's natural, it's part of it. It's important to speak from the basics and from the very beginning of the learning process.
Yeah, because if you don't, you never will. You'll never get to a point
and the important thing is
better.
to be able to communicate. You are in a new country, in a new society. Not all people in Uruguay speak fluent English, so it's really important to be able to communicate in Spanish.
Nowadays, more and more people do speak English, but still, it's not like it is in Mexico or a country like that, right? You're gonna have to fend for yourself.
It will happen that you will take a bus and the bus driver won't speak English, or you will go to a restaurant and the waiter say, I'm sorry, I don't speak English, only Spanish. Mm-hmm. So you need to be prepared for that and be able to handle the situation in Spanish.
Absolutely. You're the admissions officer at Academia Uruguay,
right,
which is a great little language school here in Montevideo. What can students do as part of the school? Because you don't just offer classes, right?
Yeah, Well, as you said, we offer classes. We offer both online and in-person classes.
So people can start with you before they come.
Exactly. As we said before, people can start studying with us before coming to Uruguay and continue, sometimes even
idea.
with the same teacher, same study materials, after their arrival in Uruguay.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Studying online and then coming and working with the same teacher. Love it.
Yeah. Well, we have our own study material, and I think that is something important to point out, because most of the books for Spanish as a second language are printed in Spain. So that's not the Uruguayan Spanish that you will need when you come to Uruguay. Our books are written by the academic director, our teachers. The examples are related to our culture. So you will start learning about Uruguay before coming to our country. I think that's something really important, and that makes the difference.
That's fantastic. And you're not going to find that kind of information because there's so little written about Uruguay and available online outside. And you also have an online language platform, right?
Yes.
Self-study?
For online classes, we do have an online platform. The same. It was developed by our academic directors and teachers. So you will find there exercises, videos, audios to listen, and everything is in the Uruguayan Spanish, or if we talk the right way, Rio Platense variety of Spanish.
And also, because I've seen it and I think it's brilliant, it's like the examples are Uruguayan culture and history and music,
Exactly.
and that's so cool.
Yeah.
And
for example, if you need to fill in the blanks, an exercise, giving directions. Okay, it will be probably related on how to get from the school to the Independence Square, that is the most important square in Montevideo.
so super useful and to the point.
Exactly. Not only classes, that's important. We offer weekly 2 after-school activities with a tour guide from school. It's not the typical tour that you can buy with a travel agency. It's an activity that was planned only for our students, and most of them consist of visiting different neighborhoods. We go often to the Parliament Palace, museums, special events like theater plays, concerts, cinema, of course in Spanish.
And I hope you study the plot before they go.
Yeah. We offer weekly Spanish workshop that can be conversation, listening, mate. We teach
Is
our
that
students.
open to anybody?
Yeah, to all our students. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
How to prepare and drink and taste the Uruguayan mate. We offer accommodation with the host families. I think that's something really important when you're planning to maximize the practice time, because you have 4 hours a day, for example, if you take group classes in the school, and then you go and live with an Uruguayan host family who speaks Spanish, of course, and you need to interact with them, and you'll share, I don't know, dinner and spend time with them, weekends. It's a great opportunity to put in practice what you have learned in class.
For sure. And so how can people find out about Academia Uruguay?
Our website is www.academiauruguay.com. By email, info@academiauruguay.com. Or if you want to call, of course, you can call us. Our phone number is +598 2915 2496.
Thanks so much. It's been so helpful.
It was my pleasure, and I hope this video helps. Prueba superada.
Yay! Woohoo!